Imagine this chilling reality. Has Vladimir Putin, the so-called energy giant, accidentally turned the icy weapon he aimed at Europe back on his own people? Freezing them in their homes as Russian gas pipelines burst under neglect and war diversion? Is this the twist no one saw coming in a land of endless winters? After the provocative game of energy threats, where Putin boasted he'd freeze Europe without Russian gas, the tables have turned dramatically. The fuel he weaponized now ignites a crisis within Russia itself. Families huddle beneath piles of blankets, the air stinging their skin like frostbite's cruel kiss. What can they do? Endure, they say, the mark of a patient people. These haunting words echo from Angarsk, Siberia's industrial powerhouse, where residents shiver in despair, their voices trembling, breath forming visible clouds in the biting cold. Building on Putin's ironic warnings that Europe would freeze, today it's Russia facing the deep freeze, not outsiders, but millions from Moscow to Crimea, the Far East to Siberia. In 2025, his own citizens face this brutal irony, as diverted social funds fuel war machines instead. Can a nation survive such betrayal? Feel the crunch of snow underfoot and the numbing ache of unchilled teeth. This marks a nation's unraveling, with cities like Sarov, in Sverdlovsk Oblast, as ground zero. Following the shock of internal betrayal mirroring Putin's external threats, collapse hits hard in Sarov. A boiler room malfunction sparks a deadly chain reaction. Over 16,800 souls, hospitals, schools plunge into -40-degree darkness, heating gone in an instant. Mayor Vasily Sizikov proclaims emergency status, no other path left. Nearby Saratov echoes the agony, 85,000 cut off from warmth after a combined heat and power plant crash, mercury dropping to -18. Pipes groan like tortured metal, the smell of rust-laced moisture fills the air. Will the breakage stop here, or spread further? Escalating from localized disasters in Sarov and Saratov, cities' wrath peaks in Angarsk, Irkutsk region, a full humanitarian nightmare. Accustomed to harsh Siberian triumphs, this year's ordeal stems from human folly, not nature's wrath. December brings ruin to the aging CHPP-9 plant, its 62-year-old Soviet bones yielding to metal fatigue. Precisely 167,000 people lose heat at -30 degrees. Picture homes engulfed in lethal chill, no escape. The government warns against electric heaters, fearing grid overload. What do desperate parents do? They clutch hot water bottles to their children, feeling the searing warmth clash with icy breaths. Pipes creak ominously, or will they shatter completely? From Angarsk's heart-pounding tragedy, Russia's systemic rot reveals itself. Infrastructure neglect dates back to the Brezhnev era, untouched as hypersonic missiles soared under Putin's 25-year reign. Pipes now fracture from war budget strain. In Sakha Republic, Earth's coldest realm, disaster unfolds amid vast riches. -50-degree reads on thermometers mean no gas, heating fails universally, coal a scarce stream. Budget deficits soar to 24.4 billion rubles, schools shudder, elderlies tremble, hospitals chill. Deputy Viktor Fyodorov demands 63 billion for survival. But Moscow doles out only 34. Could priorities humiliate a mining giant earning billions from diamonds, gold, uranium, rare earths? The irony bitter as furnaces starve, villages like Tixi teeter on ruin, infrastructure's frozen solid. Deepening the Sakha heart's frozen core, wildfires of discontent ignite infrastructure melting. Water pipes burst with pops like gunfire, sewage overflows reek of decay, tactile sludge icing fingers. Schools in Verkhny-Kalemsky close, boiler deaths halt Kobyaisky fires. Residents layer coats, gloves, hats, constant armor against relentless cold. Administrator Rostislav Dalanov sways, suggesting to dim cultural centers, sports halls, save funds, suspend life itself. Is this governance's nadir, shuddering state essence? Yet, coal mines unpaid send debts spiraling, salaries unpaid, transports idle. Reserves vanish, deputy energy officials confess cash voids. Half the needed 63 billion misses, missiles claim the rest. Sanctions block turbines, valves, repairs transient. Snowed-in highways trap tankers, hypothermia's whisper ever closer. Transitioning from Sakha's defiant despair to Crimea's annexed illusions shattering, snowstorms expose unpreparedness. A month's rain dumps in hours, chaos reigns. Simferopol's roads jam, Yalta grinds to halt, 17,000 lose power. Why? Post-annexation, militarization over infrastructure, the promised prosperity a lie. Darkness swallows, winds howl deafeningly, the scent of wet earth mixed with petrol fumes clings. Could Crimea, once a security vow, become isolation's symbol? Amidst Crimea's storm rage, a domino fall amplifies societal fracture. Heating failures cascade like avalanche roars from Angarsk to Severodvinsk. Officials urge coat-clad homestays, but panic buys heaters, grids overload, transformers erupt, plunging neighborhoods into starless voids. Power vanishes, water pumps seize, pipes freeze, bursting like veins, sewage backflows. Drinking water evaporates, one failure toppling the next in classic ruin. Sensory overload, acrid smoke from burnt wires, frigid tremors through bones, trust erodes as mothers shield unfed kids from frost's grip. Beyond physical shivers, this freeze corrodes societal backbone. Russians withstood hunger, tyranny, drafts, but now? Cold breaches final defenses. Soldiers dispatched to front lines float home as icy mementos. Metropolis Moscow, St. Petersburg insulated, while poor peripheries Siberia, Yakutia, Far East bear conscription burdens, ethnic minorities disproportionately harvesting. Higher draft rates devour youth, budgets per soldier cover Yakutsk deficits or boiler fixes, yet funds missile-bound. Rural folk, locked out of education, careers, view army as salvation, only to become war's disposable scraps. Unfolding from peripheral sacrifices, logistical nightmares cripple the backbone by call highways. Mobilization drains snow crews, migrants flee, budgets bankrupt for salt, shovels. Teams at half strength, 100-kilometer jams form. Sounds of engines idling futilely, exhaust fumes choking air, military convoys stall, supplies, fuels marooned. Deeper humiliation, war efforts choked by home front chill. The twist? Invincible Russia ponders self-immolation. In the heart of Siberia, nearly 85,000 residents of Angarsk faced a deadly cold. A critical failure at a decades-old power station left the city shrouded in darkness, temperatures plummeting to -18 degrees. Imagine being trapped in your own home, shivering under blankets, trying to soothe trembling children, while the outside world is a frozen wasteland. The government warns, do not use electric heaters, they could overload the fragile grid. So, what options remain when the cold bites too deep? People desperate for warmth begin to huddle closer, clutching hot water bottles, praying the pipes don't burst under the strain. That disaster wasn't just bad luck, it was neglect in disguise. The accident at the Soviet-era CHPP-9 thermal power plant in early December wasn't unforeseen. After 62 years of service, rust and metal fatigue caused the plant to collapse, cutting off heat to nearly 167,000 people. The streets echo with the whispers of frozen pipes and broken dreams. Imagine sleek, icy corridors coated with frost because the essential systems have failed. What if your child's hospital is unable to warm up the sick? The silence of freezing water pipes bursting is deafening. Russia's infrastructure hasn't been updated since the era of Brezhnev. While decades of leadership focused on hypersonic missiles and military power, the pipes in cities like Angarsk and Serev rot away in silence. The government's priorities are clear: missile stockpiles over vital infrastructure. As the war budget swallows up funds meant for the people, entire regions suffer. The Sakha Republic, blessed with rich mineral treasures, is now a frozen disaster zone. Here, the thermometer often hits -50, yet the region's heating systems barely function. Coal is scarce, the budget deficit soars 24.4 billion rubles, leaving children without schooling, the elderly to freeze, hospitals with morgue-like corridors. Officials admit, they only allocated 34 billion rubles, less than half the 63 billion needed to keep the energy system alive. Instead, money vanishes into missile production and military projects. Meanwhile, the region's infrastructure collapses around them. Water pipes burst, sewage lines freeze solid, and entire communities are left in darkness. The regional deputy laments, "We need more funds," but Moscow turns a deaf ear. The people, already burdened by poverty, now face a winter of despair. Beyond Siberia, in Crimea, a storm of a different nature exposes the chaos. A catastrophic snowstorm dumped a month's worth of rain in just 1 hour. Roads, once symbols of stability, became rivers of mud and ice. The highway to Sevastopol shut down, Yalta's streets ground to a halt. 17,000 residents lost power amid howling winds and freezing rain. Why? Because instead of investing in infrastructure, authorities spent their time turning Crimea into a military fortress. The promises of stability and warmth shattered like brittle ice beneath their feet. What's left behind is not just a ruined road, but a collapsing social contract. For years, the Kremlin convinced the nation that obedience would bring safety, comfort, and warmth. Now, that promise has vanished. The essential systems, heating, water, electricity, fail one after the other. The cold cuts deeper than frost, it seeps into trust, into hope. The people's patience is thinning like cracked ice. And the situation worsens as the mobilization drags young men from remote villages, places like Yakutia, straight to the front lines. The highest conscription rates come from the regions most neglected. These young recruits see the war as their only escape, yet they pay the highest price. Meanwhile, the highways that keep supply lines open are overwhelmed. Since thousands of drivers and workers were drafted, snow removal crews are half their size. Snow piles up, freezing tanks and military convoys alike, blocking the roads that lead to the front. This isn't just about winter storms, it's a systemic failure. The silent collapse of vital logistics and infrastructure signals a nation's descent into chaos. The once proud promise of a great Russia crumbles beneath its frozen surface. The question remains, when will the cold finally swallow the last remnants of control? In the vast, icy wilderness of Siberia, the consequences of political neglect have become painfully clear. Once thriving with resources worth billions annually, these regions now face a harsh winter worse than any before. Rumors swirl that the Kremlin's priorities have shifted, neglecting basic needs for cold, hungry communities. Have they left these distant lands to freeze in silence? The reality is devastating. Towns like Tixi and Verkhnikalamsky are suffering as infrastructure crumbles. Water pipes burst under the weight of ice, and sewage systems collapse, turning streets into frozen rivers of waste. Schools, once bustling centers of learning, are shut down because the heating systems have failed. Boiler rooms in local villages are shut due to unpaid debts, while residents spend endless days bundled in coats, gloves, and hats, trying to combat the encroaching cold that seeps through every crack. Authorities offer hollow excuses, statements that are almost like a slap in the face. One regional official, Rostim Dalanov, coldly suggested freezing cultural centers and sports halls to save money. Imagine that, sacrificing the arts, sports, and community life. Is this the new face of governance? Are they willing to let the fabric of society dissolve while funds are diverted elsewhere? Meanwhile, the future vanishes in the icy air. The resource-rich Sakha Republic, famed for diamonds, gold, and rare minerals, faces a dire crisis. The local treasury has run dry. Coal mines threaten to shut down as payments halt. Some regions have exhausted their last reserves. The deputy energy minister openly admits funds for repairs and maintenance are non-existent. Only half of the 63 billion rubles required for infrastructure has been secured. The rest? Spent on weapons and missile programs. Western sanctions have strangled access to crucial parts, turbines, valves, and essential equipment vanish into the shadowy corridors of military projects. Repairs stall. Transportation halts. Snow blankets the highways, but desperation is now the coldest, most destructive element. In the east, heavy snowstorms threaten to paralyze the Trans-Siberian route, with stranded fuel tankers warning of chaos. Roads that once carried vital supplies now lie buried beneath snow and neglect. But perhaps the most startling revelation, even the military convoy routes face slowdowns because the infrastructure simply cannot cope. As vehicles inch forward through icy passings, the question remains, how long can this crisis be hidden beneath layers of snow and silence? And as darkness falls over Crimea, the once opulent peninsula exposed by a ferocious storm, a storm revealing the depths of unpreparedness, the real question lingers, is this collapse just the beginning? Or are we witnessing the unraveling of a state built on illusions and broken promises? In the depths of Russia, only half the needed 63 billion rubles reached infrastructure funding. Funds poured straight into missile production. Western sanctions blocked critical parts like turbines and high-pressure valves. Temporary fixes couldn't become lasting solutions. Imagine Vladimir Putin boasting he'd freeze Europe with energy as a weapon. Freeze without our gas, he declared. But now, in 2025, ice grips Putin's own homeland. Desperate voices echo from Angarsk's frosty industrial core. We huddle under 3 blankets, enduring the bite. Crimea's annexed shores promised prosperity, yet there's chaos on iced roads. From Moscow's outskirts to Crimea, Siberia to the Far East, millions shiver in collapse. Budgets bled for war, starving social needs. Sarev's boiler room faltered, plunging 16,800 into -40-degree voids, schools freezing, hospitals dark. Mayor Sisakov proclaimed an emergency. Saratov saw 85,000 cut off at -18 degrees. Angarsk's tragedy unfolded when CHPP-9 crumbled from age, a 62-year relic failing under fatigue, leaving 167,000 in -30 horror. What did they do? Banned electric heaters to spare the grid. Instead, they cradled kids with hot bottles, the air's icy stabbing through skin. Pipes rusted since Brezhnev's era burst under war's strain. Putin launched hypersonic missiles, neglected basics. Saka, with diamond gold riches, plunged into coldest nightmares, -50, no gas, cola myth. 24.4 billion ruble shortfall meant shut schools, frozen elders, unheated hospitals. Deputy Fyodorov begged for 63 billion, got 34, Kremlin leftovers. Villagers in Tixi endured burst pipes, collapsed sewers. Verkhnikolinsk schools closed, boiler debt crippled Kobyai. Coats, gloves, hats became winter garb. Official Valinov urged chilling culture halls and gyms to cut costs. A state on pause. Does the cold snuff dreams too? Administrators couldn't pay miners, debts piled, shipments halted, salaries stalled. Last coal dwindled. Deputy Minister confessed, no funds. Budget redirections, part shortages, logistics jams. Heavy blizzards blanketed the Trans-Siberian and Baikal highways. Emergency fuel trucks stuck for days, engines grumbling in silence. Not just Siberia's chill. Crimea, Putin's prized gem, shattered in this decay. A rainstorm dumped a month's deluge in an hour. Roads washed away, transport halted. Simferopol-Sevastopol route sealed, Yalta trapped. 17,000 lost power. Why the mayhem? Occupying forces armored the peninsula as a stronghold, ignoring fixes. Promised order brought darkness and deep freeze. Rhetorical thorn, if Russia's resilience breaks here, what cracks next in ice? Was this mere malfunction, or the unraveling of a silent pact? Kremlin whispered, stay quiet, stay warm and safe. Warmth vanishes now, systemic ruin exposed. Heating faltered city by city, Angarsk, Sarev, Bratsk. Officials urged bundled homes. Panic sparked heater rushes, grids buckled. Transformers blew, crackling and popping, plunging areas into days-long blackouts, the acrid tang of burnt wires lingering. Pumps stalled, pipes splintered with cracks, raw sewage stench rising from bursts. Chain reaction, failure spread like toppling dominoes. Shock turned souls brittle. Patriots endured famines, repressions, drafts. Yet, if a mother can't shield her infant from biting cold, or a frail patient thaws in unheated wards, faith shatters. Putin's rosy vision hit a cruel trap. Metropolises like Moscow insulated, drafting from named Siberian, Irkutian, Far Eastern fringes, minority strongholds. Soldiers marched forward, just frozen homes awaited. Draft quotas swelled 2024 to 2025, tens of thousands yanked, by choice or force. Per soldier's cost could mend Yakutsk deficits or rewire boilers. But gold flowed to missiles. Study revealed, for minorities or rural folk, army offered escape from bleak prospects. Expended as cannon fodder in war's razor storms. Hidden dread loomed larger. Baikal Highway, Russia's vital artery, jammed 100 kilometers. Snowbound, yes, but deeper mobilization drained plow crews, migrants fled, no coins for salt or shovels. Teams halved, roads ungovernable. Twist of fate, civilian woes halted war machines too? Was this collapse sabotaging its own war? Fuel convoys lagged. Supplies crumbled in drifts. Army trucks idled. Russia's veins froze solid, from front lines inward. How long before the breakthrough exposes the illusion's cracks? The sensory assault, a numbing fingertip kiss, breath-fogging sharp, distant howls of unloaded engines begging for momentum echoes a question no one dares answer aloud. Will trust thaw, or does the iceberg swallow all? And what unseen alliance between soldier and winter lurks beneath the surface? Continuing from the cascading failures where one heating breakdown sparked widespread outages, plunging neighborhoods into chaos and eroding societal trust. In the biting cold of Yakutia's frozen wastes, imagine the sharp crack of ice forming on pipes, like gunshots in the night. The Russians have weathered famines, crackdowns, and forced drafts before. But what if a parent can't shield her baby from frostbite's cruel sting, or a sick elder can't heal in a room warmed by more than breath? Doesn't that shatter faith in the government forever? That's unraveling right now. Putin's grand vision of Russia thrives on a brutal irony in forgotten towns. Fighters march to battlefronts, yet frost returns as the reunion gift. Flashback, remember the warmth of Soviet summers? Children splashing in black earth villages, the earthy musk of freshly tilled soil clinging to clothes, laughter echoing like distant thunder. That was before the freeze set in, turning dreams to brittle shards. The leadership, guarding hubs like Moscow from war's toll, redirects drafts to impoverished zones thick with diverse folk, Siberia, Yakutia, the Far East. These places bleed the most manpower into the grinder, getting scraps for essentials in return. In isolated spots like Yakutia, enlistments soar absurdly high versus urban cores. In 2024 and 2025, scores of youths from these fringes hit the lines, by choice or compulsion. Funds for each warrior could end Yakutsk's shortfall or mend heating cores. Yet, they vanish into missile factories, not local fixes. Studies reveal minorities and rural folkview services escape from dead-end paths. But they're cannon fodder, hurled into war's fiercest gauntlets. The army's shadow over this freeze? Subtle, yet lethal. Russia's lifeblood artery, the Baikal Highway, east to west? Gridlocked in a 100-kilometer snarl now. Spots might call it blizzard wrath. Underlying it? A void of hands for plows. Mobilization yanked thousands of city crews into ranks. Refugees, seeking safety elsewhere, drained away. Local coffers hollow, can't scrape for salt or tools. Outcome? Clearing crews limp at half strength. Russia's endless roads turn into powder traps. This throttles everyday grind, and starves supply chains to the trenches. What chilling twist hides in this freeze? Will the heart of the empire's war machine choke on its own neglect? Are the snowbound convoys a harbinger of collapse? As the ice tightens its grip, voices whisper, what if the thaw exposes the Kremlin's hollow core? In shadows of abandoned boiler rooms, the metallic tang of rust bites the air. Residence halls echo with muffled curses, gloves slapping numb fingers. Is this the breaking point, where endurance meets betrayal? Stay tuned for the avalanche of consequences. Will Putin's fortress stand against the storm brewing within? A massive 100-kilometer-long queue has formed on a vital road. At first glance, it might look like a heavy snowstorm. But beneath the surface, a deeper crisis emerges. The real problem? A severe shortage of snow removal crews. Since the mobilization, thousands of municipal workers have been conscripted into the army. Their absence leaves roads buried under icy chaos. Without enough personnel, Russia's vast highways are turning into unimaginable nightmares. Trucks, ambulances, and military convoys are stuck, immobilized. For days, essential supplies, medical equipment, fuel, food remain stranded under layers of snow and ice. The sound of howling wind mixes with the crackling of frozen pipes. The cold bites deep, and the icy grip tightens. But how did things reach this point? Could this snow-covered nightmare reveal a secret vulnerability? This systemic breakdown exposes a brutal truth. Russia's energy empire, once a strategic weapon, is crumbling from within. For decades, natural gas and oil dictated foreign policy. Russia used its energy exports as leverage against Europe. Moscow's dependency was a bargaining tool, a way to control the West. But the Ukraine conflict shattered that illusion. Since 2022, Russian gas exports to Europe have plummeted by 70 to 80%. Today, Moscow is no longer the energy superpower it once claimed to be. Its share of European gas imports has dropped to single digits. Europe's REPowerEU strategy accelerates the shift away from Russian fuels. Renewable energy, LNG imports, and infrastructure projects now prioritize independence. No longer a one-way weapon. Russia's energy reliance is devolving into a liability. As pipelines run empty and Moscow's influence wanes, a new question emerges. How much longer can Russia's aging infrastructure withstand this systemic collapse? And what happens when the icy grip finally grips the Kremlin itself? The cracks are visible: frozen pipelines, overburdened supplies, neglected repairs. The cold reveals not only a weather crisis but a nation on the brink of full collapse. Russia's grip on Europe's energy has been unraveling faster than anyone expected. As the European Union strategy called REPowerEU accelerates, the continent's dependence on Russian gas is shrinking. Europe invests billions into renewables, efficiency, and alternative sources, turning energy dependence into a weakened bargaining tool for Moscow. Suddenly, Russia's energy weapon is losing its power, but the real shock? Russia, facing its own energy crisis, is the one freezing now. In a shocking twist, the warming of Europe comes at Russia's expense. While Europe builds resilience, the Russian people are enduring brutal cold spells, unthinkable just a few years ago. Frozen landscapes stretch over Siberia and Crimea, where icy winds cut to the bone. As Vladimir Putin threatened to freeze Europe using energy as a weapon, now his own population is in the frigid grip of failure. People speak of sleeping under 2 or 3 blankets, desperate for warmth in cities like Angarsk, where the brutal Siberian winter shows no mercy. But what if the biggest shock is yet to come? What if the very infrastructure Putin relied on is crumbling under neglect? Deep inside Siberia, the stark truth reveals itself. The once pristine pipelines and old boiler rooms have become ticking time bombs. In the city of Saratov, a sudden breakdown in the main boiler room left nearly 17,000 residents without heat on a night plunging to -40 degrees. No heating, no mercy. The mayor had no choice but to declare a state of emergency. But this is just one city. Across Russia, the horror story repeats. Over 85,000 people in another city were suddenly left in the cold, cooling systems failing, broken pipes, temperatures plummeting, and the chill seeping into every home. The government warns not to use electric heaters, but what can families do when the infrastructure's collapsed? Hot water bottles become makeshift life preservers, as the power plants, built during the Soviet era, crack under the weight of neglect. Imagine standing in your home, desperately trying to keep your children warm, while the freezing air slips through every crack. That's the new reality for millions in Russia: bodies trembling, spirits frozen. The infrastructure is decaying, pipes burst, hospitals struggle to function, and the nation's vast resources are wasted on military might instead of restoring what's broken. The old pipes, outdated and corroded, can't handle the cold, and the pipes burst, flooding streets with icy water. Russia's rich resource lands, like the Sakha Republic, known for diamonds and uranium, are now cabins in a frozen wasteland. With no natural gas to warm homes, and coal almost a luxury, the regional budgets are in free fall. Children sit cold in shuttered schools, the elderly shiver in barren clinics. What if this disaster is no accident? What if it's a calculated act of sabotage? In the midst of this chaos, the state's officials are making horrifying choices. The regional leader of Sakha, for instance, proposes shutting down cultural centers and sports halls to save money. The irony? The very fabric of social life is being torn apart by neglect. Mines that feed the country's economy are silent. Power plants are silent. Coal supplies dwindle because Moscow refuses to send funds, instead funneling money into missile projects and military expansion. This is no coincidence. It's a plan, deliberate, devastating, and deadly. Meanwhile, war-stricken Crimea faces its own unexpected catastrophe. The once pristine beaches and fortified ports, supposed to be symbols of Russian strength, have been hit by a vicious snowstorm. Floodwaters, heavy rain, and unprepared infrastructure turn the holiday paradise into chaos. The main highway to Sevastopol is clogged with stranded vehicles. Power is lost, thousands of residents left in darkness, shivering as the cold bites through their bones. The occupation leadership prioritized military operations over infrastructure repair, leaving the vulnerable exposed. What's the real cost? Not just transportation delays, but lives hanging in the balance in a frozen, forsaken land. Could this chaos unravel the Kremlin's control over the region? The collapse goes deeper. As power fails, water pipes freeze, sewage systems collapse, and entire districts are plunged into darkness. Panic spreads as residents realize their basic needs are no longer met. The social contract, the promise to keep people safe, secure, and warm, has shattered. Every failure chips away at trust in Putin's government. For generations, Russians endured hunger, oppression, mobilization. But now, when mothers cannot protect their children from the cold, even the strongest faith in leadership erodes. The illusion of a mighty Russia, invincible and prosperous, is melting away in the icy shadows. And the grand irony? While the Kremlin pours billions into missile programs and military hardware, they neglect their own homes. Regions like Yakutia, with their vast mineral wealth, are left destitute when it comes to basic heating. These are the lands that produce diamonds, gold, uranium, and rare earth elements, yet their people shiver in freezing darkness. Budget deficits skyrocket, officials admit they lack funds to buy coal or maintain infrastructure. Instead, the money vanishes into weapon production, leaving communities abandoned. The residents see the military as their only hope, but it's a false promise. The war has turned these regions into a stripped battleground, where survival depends on resilience and luck. The logistical nightmare worsens. The massive Trans-Siberian Highway, vital for moving supplies and military equipment, now resembles a frozen graveyard. Snow removal teams have been drafted into military service, migrant workers have fled, and the remaining crews are overwhelmed. Salt and shovels are scarce, leading to dangerous blockages and stranded convoys. Military vehicles, supplies, fuel all halted in a spreading gridlock. The chaos isn't just slowing civilian life, it's halting the war effort. This is how a nation with vast resources in military might is brought to its knees, not by enemies abroad, but by its own neglect and mismanagement. The real question remains, what happens when the military's logistical backbone collapses completely? The shocking truth is clear: Russia's most critical infrastructure is fragile, and the consequences are catastrophic. The unthinkable fallout of decades of neglect and war prioritization is unfolding before our eyes. What was once a mighty energy superpower now trembles on the brink of collapse. The cold, the darkness, and the desperation paint a haunting picture of a nation crumbling from within. The power is slipping away, and with it, the country's grip on control and influence. This story isn't just about infrastructure, it's about a nation's soul shivering in the dark. In a world where energy is power, Russia's grip on Europe and itself is unraveling faster than anyone anticipated. Once a master manipulator wielding gas as a weapon, the Kremlin's theft of influence is now a fragile illusion. With Europe diversifying supply routes and building strategic reserves, Russian energy no longer commands fear. Instead, it's becoming a relic of a dying empire. But the real shock? Russia's own population is now the jailer of its future. As heating systems collapse in Siberia's freezing wastelands and cities plunge into darkness, the unwavering patience of ordinary people deteriorates into chaos. Regions like Siberia and the Far East, rich in resources, are crumbling under neglect. Their pipes burst, their hospitals go dark, and desperate cries echo across abandoned streets. Meanwhile, Moscow's rulers chase global dominance, diverting funds from vital social needs to missile factories. Their greed fuels the war machine, while millions shiver in unheated homes. From the icy plains of Yakutia to the disputed shores of Crimea, the story repeats: infrastructure failures, shortages, and political unrest. When the nuclear-armed nation cannot keep its own citizens warm, what hope remains for its future? A shocking truth emerges amid this chaos. Russia's strategy of exporting energy to rogue states like Kazakhstan and China sacrifices its own people's comfort to sustain foreign profits. Internal rebellion simmers, governors demand funds they never receive. Signs of disintegration grow clearer, fires flicker in distant regions, but they no longer signal resilience. Instead, they herald collapse. Putin's ambitions have condemned his people to stand in -40-degree cold, staring at frozen walls. His authoritarian vision, once centered on dominance and control, now faces an unstoppable wave of unrest. The plan to plunge others into darkness has backfired, leaving his own nation trembling on the brink of ruin. This isn't just a story of infrastructure failure. It's the unraveling of a superpower, hidden behind a mask of resilience. The question remains, how long can a nation survive when its people are freezing, and its future is slipping away in darkness? The clock is ticking. Lights are flickering out. Darkness is creeping over what once was mighty Russia, its future shrouded like a cold, irreversible shadow. No place remains safe. War has entered homes silently, and the cold silence speaks volumes. What do you believe will happen next? Will Russia rise from its frozen ashes or succumb entirely to chaos? Your thoughts matter. Share your perspective.